All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. After this academic year, we know that the Pac 12 conference will never be the same as USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon are heading to the Big Ten, while Stanford and Cal are going to the ACC. And then you got Utah, Arizona State, Arizona, and Colorado going to the Big 12. These moves have left Washington State and Oregon State behind. But if you think that the Cougars and Beavers are going out without a fight, then you need to think again. Washington State and Oregon State have battled their current Pac 12 brethren on the athletic fields for nearly a century. And now that battle is heading to the courtroom. Washington State and Oregon State have filed a legal complaint against Pac 12 Commissioner George Kliakoff, as well as the conference, as they are seeking an emergency temporary restraining order for the future of the conference. And honestly, you cannot blame them. Throughout this entire process, Washington State and Oregon State have been disrespected as loyalty has been overtaken by greed, while you also cannot overlook the lack of leadership in the Pac 12 from Kliakoff, as well as his predecessor, Larry Scott. Why should the outgoing schools from the Pac 12 have a say in the future of the league when Oregon State and Washington State are still committed to keeping this league afloat? Now, USC and others are set to cash in from the Big Ten, and the same can be said for the departing schools going to the ACC and Big 12, respectively. But now they're seeking more after they've already hung both Washington State and Oregon State out to dry. And again, they really should not have a say as far as the money and how it's going to be dispersed, as well as whether or not the conference should dissolve altogether. Now, even if Washington State and Oregon State are able to save the Pac 12, the league will obviously not be the same, which means that both the Cougars and Beavers are not going to come close to getting the kind of payday from television money that they were and have been accustomed to. Now, we've heard about rumors, and they're rumors, but rumors could be true as far as Washington State and Oregon State merging with the Mountain West. But it's not about Washington State and Oregon State going to the Mountain West as much of it as is about the Mountain West merging with Washington State and Oregon State under the Pac 12 banner. And regardless if it's Washington State and Oregon State going to the Mountain West or the Mountain West going to Washington State and Oregon State, I've said all along that this thing could work because you would still have a footprint on the West Coast. And I cannot say this strong enough, but all of the kids, maybe for football, for USC, okay, but all of these kids are not from the West Coast, the high school talent, regardless of the sport, baseball, football, basketball, tennis, you name it. All of these kids are not going to want to travel around the country and compete. And Washington State and Oregon State merging with the Mountain West keeps you with a footprint on the West Coast. And some of those kids are definitely going to want to go there and compete. The Mountain West already gets some of those kids. So now some of those upper echelon kids, maybe not all of the 5 and 4 star recruits, regardless of the sport, but some of them, I guarantee you, are going to want to stay on the West Coast. The Mountain West already has 3 schools within the state of California, the talent rich state of California, with San Diego State, San Jose State, and Fresno State. You still got UNLV, Boise State, Wyoming, New Mexico, Utah State, and so many others. This thing could work, especially if everybody is committed to one another. Now, for Washington State and Oregon State, they need to take a page out of the Big East Conference. And I say that because When the Big East Conference was about to break up about 10 years ago, the non football schools got together, took the Big East name, added basketball schools, and they've gone on to flourish. Now, if Washington State and Oregon State can win out, keep the Pac 12 name, keep it as an entity, and then bring in the Mountain West, they have an opportunity at success as long as everybody is on the same page. And I do believe that to be the case if there was a merger. Now, the paperwork for this temporary restraining order was filed in Whitman County, Washington, which is where Washington State is located. And I think that should work in the favor of both Washington State and Oregon State. Now, this is a battle that is not going away anytime soon. And if you are Washington State and Oregon State, I simply do not blame you. You've been disrespected in this process from the word go. And like I've talked about, even with this round of realignment and previous rounds of realignment, we've spit in the face of rivalries, we've spit in the face of tradition in favor of money. And you look at it right now, again, a lack of leadership has damaged the Pac 12. You can't tell me with the way that this college football season has started for the Pac 12. They're undefeated, okay, coming into this weekend. You look at the dynamic around Colorado right now with Deion Sanders. You look at the excitement once again around USC with Lincoln Riley as the head coach and Caleb Williams as a quarterback. You have multiple teams that can get to the college football playoff. You have multiple schools when you look at it right now with an expanded college football playoff, and you can't tell me that they can't put two or three schools there consistently. So, with that all said and done, you can't tell me that the Pac 12 couldn't have sat down with the proper leadership and have gotten at least $40 million per school from a new television deal. You just can't tell me that didn't like that could not have happened. But nonetheless, Washington State and Oregon State have been disrespected in this entire process. Now, what happens? I do believe that a settlement is going to come down the pike. And I think, it should or it could rather, work favorably in, the favor of Washington State and Oregon State. Because again, why should these outgoing schools have a say in things? There's no need for them. They have no desire to keep this conference afloat. If they did, okay, they would have tried to make this work and they could have made this work. Even if they had just removed Klyavkov as the commissioner and just gone in a different direction. Because remember, when the Big 12 was teetering on the brink more than a decade ago, when Nebraska, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Colorado decided to leave, they parted with Dan Beebe, rather, excuse me, as the conference's commissioner, and they got new leadership, and that new leadership was able to keep the conference afloat. So again, if these guys are on their way out the door, there's no need for them to sit up there and have a say in what happens with this conference going forward. From a personal standpoint, I'm pulling for Washington State and Oregon State because, again, they've been disrespected. Will they be able to keep this thing together? We've got to wait and see. But at the end of the day, they're not going out with a fight. And as long as they got a fight in this, Washington State and Oregon State definitely have a shot. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.